Levi and Max sat at the kitchen table with wide smiles, watching Liam, the little 6-year-old boy, running around the living room. He was in one of his rare bursts of energy, laughing as he tried to imitate the dance steps he saw on TV. The two exchanged a glance without saying a word, but their eyes sparkled. This was the moment they had both waited for, the moment that had finally become a reality. The dream of being parents had come true. Liam's adoption hadn't been easy. It had been a long journey, with countless forms, meetings, and moments of anxiety. For months, the couple faced the bureaucratic process, hoping that one day they would finally bring home the child they had so longed for. Every meeting with social workers, every visit to the shelter where Liam was staying, felt like a step closer, but also a longer one, as if hope was always followed by doubts and insecurities. But when the day finally came, and the judge signed the papers, when Liam walked through the door of his new home with curious, yet shy eyes, it was as if a weight had been lifted from both of their hearts. The sense of completeness, of belonging, was immediate. They were a family. The adjustment wasn't easy. Liam, who had spent his early years in a shelter, had some difficulties. He was used to a rigid routine and, at times, a lack of affection. But Levi and Max had patience. They knew the road would be long, but they were willing to walk side by side with Liam, offering him love and security. Every hug, every comforting word, every smile shared seemed to strengthen the bonds that now united them. But despite the love and patience, not everyone around them shared the enthusiasm and acceptance Levi and Max had hoped for. In the neighborhood, the presence of the couple always drew skeptical glances. Some people smiled politely, but Levi and Max could tell from the quick, judgmental looks, the smiles that never reached their eyes. When they approached other parents at the park, there was always a tone of hesitation, as if some found it hard to accept the idea of a gay couple raising a child. Margaret, the neighbor from the building next door, was one of the most obvious examples. She always seemed to have an opinion about everything, especially when it came to Levi and Max. The first time she saw them with Liam at the park, she looked at them with a gaze that, although cordial, carried an underlying distrust. "I hope he has a good future," she said with a tense smile, almost as if she were forcing the words. Levi tried to ignore it, but Max, more sensitive to this kind of judgment, noticed the irony in the way Margaret spoke. She wasn't happy for them. She was skeptical, uncomfortable. "Levi, trying to ease the tension, it's not worth it, Max. People will always have an opinion. What matters is what we have here inside, Max." Taking a deep breath, "I know, but it's hard not to care. It feels like they don't understand what we're doing for him." Levi, knowing Max was right, squeezed his hand, offering a silent gesture of support. They didn't need anyone's approval. They had Liam, and that was enough. Despite the difficulties, their home environment was warm and welcoming. The mornings were filled with breakfast preparations, with Liam trying to get ready for school, his laughter echoing through the house. In the evenings, the conversations at the table were filled with shared stories, with Liam, initially shy, gradually loosening up and feeling comfortable enough to talk about his day. Weekends were filled with trips to Central Park. Liam loved seeing the dogs, running alongside Max and Levi, and even feeding bread to the ducks in the pond. Sometimes he would ask, curious and innocent, if he would have brothers and sisters, but Max and Levi always replied with a smile, telling him he was their only one and already had all the love in the world. But even in moments of joy, there was still a sense that they weren't fully accepted by everyone. When Liam came home from school, with a worried look on his face and unwilling to explain, Max sensed that something was going on. "Liam," shaking his head, "the other boys, they asked me why you and Daddy are married," Levi, overhearing the conversation, put his hand on Liam's shoulder. "Levi, you know what to say, right? That Daddy and Papa love each other, and that's the most important thing." Liam nodded, but Levi and Max knew he was starting to notice the difference. It wasn't just the school routine or the normal activities for a child his age. It was the world outside that was beginning to show the first sparks of a society that, though modern, wasn't quite ready to accept everything. That afternoon, as Liam played in the garden, Levi and Max sat in silence, watching him with affection. They knew that, while the love between them was unquestionable, the world outside could be cruel, but nothing would make them give up being the family they had always dreamed of being. Still, the pain of those small glances and unspoken words was always present. Doubt hung in the air, like a shadow, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. But for now, life went on, and deep down, Max and Levi knew there was no turning back. They were ready to face everything together. Their family was real, and nothing and no one could change that. The morning was calm when Max and Levi were organizing things for what seemed like just another typical Saturday. Liam, as always, was in front of the TV, watching his favorite cartoons while munching on an apple, which made him look even more immersed in his new life as a son, far from the shadows of the shelter. The two dads were in the kitchen, discussing the best way to spend the weekend, planning a trip to the zoo. However, the tranquility of that day was soon broken by a knock on the door. Margaret, the neighbor who had exchanged only a few pleasantries with them since Liam arrived, was there, with a serious expression on her face. She didn't even wait for a greeting. Without hesitation, she said, "Margaret." "Levi, Max, I need to talk to you. This can't be ignored anymore." Max looked at Levi, uncomfortable. He felt a growing tension in the air, as if something bad was about to happen. Levi, trying to be diplomatic, smiled and opened the door, inviting Margaret in. Levi: "Sure, Margaret. What happened?" Margaret seemed more agitated than usual, her hands trembling as she held a file of documents. She stepped through the door without asking, and her voice was louder than usual. "Something was wrong, Margaret. I didn't want to have to do this, but it's my duty. I went to the school today to talk to Liam's teacher, and what I heard, well, I can't ignore it." Levi and Max exchanged confused looks. What was she trying to say? "Max, Margaret, what are you talking about?" Margaret firmly: "They're saying Liam was touched inappropriately. I heard this from a mother at the school, and the teacher is concerned too. They said he mentioned something strange. Something about a touch during a clothes change. I can't just let this slide. You need to understand that this is not something simple." Levi's heart sank. Those words, spoken so coldly, cut through the air between them. Max, in shock, stood up abruptly. Levi, trying to control himself: "This is ridiculous. Liam never told us anything about this. He's safe here, Margaret. Are you sure about what you're saying?" Margaret took a deep breath, sensing she had touched a deep wound. She wasn't there to directly accuse, but her presence was already filled with judgment. What she wanted was for Levi and Max to understand the gravity of the situation. "Margaret, I'm just saying what I heard, and I'm not the only one who is concerned. People in the neighborhood, they're talking, and this can't be ignored. The whole town will know about this if you don't take action." Max, growing angry: "This is a lie. No one here is going to believe that. Margaret, we're doing the best for Liam. You know that." But Margaret didn't back down. She didn't seem convinced by anything, her expression hardening with every second. She simply turned and, before leaving, said, with unexpected coldness, "Margaret, I don't need to be convinced. You know what will happen if this continues. The police have already been called. I can't do anything else for you." When the door closed, the silence was even more deafening. Max was panting, his face was pale, and his eyes were fixed on the wall. Levi, on his part, didn't know what to say. He didn't know how to deal with this information. What was Margaret insinuating? How had she made that connection between something Liam had said and the worst-case scenario? They were in shock. Levi, trying to control himself: "No, it can't be. Margaret doesn't know anything." Liam is just a child. He's 6 years old. He loves us, but Max, feeling the weight of the world crashing down on his shoulders, couldn't hold back the sadness and fear that had been building up. He felt as if the walls of the house were closing in, that the small safety bubble they had created was about to burst. Max, desperate, what if she's right, Levi? What if someone told him about this? What if he really doesn't know what it is, but is still confused? What are we going to do? Levi had no answers. Nothing made sense, but the doubt that Max brought up was real. They had given Liam all the love they could, but how could they prove that nothing was wrong? That Liam was safe with them? The worry they both felt intensified when, hours later, a social services van pulled up in front of their house. A police officer got out, and a woman with a social worker badge came to the door. Reality made itself known with a knock on the door, the nervous feeling they both had as they received the unannounced visit. Officer, Mr. Levi and Mr. Max, we are from the Child Protection Department. I need to ask some questions about Liam. The house was immersed in palpable tension. What had seemed like an ordinary morning had turned into an impending nightmare. The word abuse was already in the air, and now the officer was there to investigate. Levi, his heart in his throat, looked at Max. The words Margaret had left hanging still echoed in their minds, and the accusation was starting to take shape. Levi, this is a mistake. You have to understand, Liam is safe with us. There's nothing wrong. The officer didn't say anything, just nodded and motioned for them to enter the house. What would be a simple questioning was soon to turn into an investigation process that would change their lives forever. The peace the couple had found in their home dissipated like smoke. Uncertainty hung in the air, and while Liam played in the back of the house, unaware of the storm approaching, Levi and Max faced a reality they never imagined they would have to confront. The police officer and the social worker entered Levi and Max's home with professional calm, but their presence only increased the sense of desperation and helplessness the couple felt. Margaret's words still echoed in Max and Levi's ears like an alarming warning. Something was very wrong, and the feeling of being watched, judged, became an increasing shadow over them. The social worker, a middle-aged woman named Karen, asked everyone to sit in the living room. She seemed attentive but unhurried, which made the atmosphere even more uncomfortable. Levi and Max exchanged glances, trying to maintain their composure, but they knew nothing would be the same again. Karen, we're here just to ensure that Liam is safe. The report is serious, and we need to ask some routine questions. Nothing personal, just procedures, but to Levi, it felt personal, as if he was being accused of something he couldn't understand. He looked at Max, who was tense, his hands shaking as he held a cup of coffee that no longer seemed to have any taste. Liam, in his room, probably playing with his toys, had no idea what was happening. The social worker started with simple questions, directed to Levi and Max. Where did Liam sleep? What was his daily routine like? Did they have any updated medical records for the boy? Those questions seemed so trivial, but to Levi, each one felt like a veiled accusation, an attempt to prove they were wrong. Karen, does Liam have any communication difficulties? Any unusual behaviors you've noticed since the adoption? Levi, trying to remain calm, answered quickly. Levi, no, Liam is a normal child. Sometimes he can be more introverted, but he's adapting well. He's happy, has friends at school, he's a joyful child. The social worker took notes, showing no emotion. She didn't seem to be looking for comforting answers. She seemed to be analyzing every word, every movement. Karen, have you noticed any signs of emotional trauma in Liam? Any recent changes in his behavior? The question hit like a blow. Levi felt a weight in his chest, and Max, visibly frustrated, closed his eyes, trying to control the anger that was rising inside him. They knew how much Liam was struggling to overcome past traumas. He had been neglected before being adopted, but now he was in a safe home, surrounded by love. It was hard to believe anyone could question that. Max, In a harsher tone, Liam had a difficult past, but he's fine. He's being loved and cared for. That's all that matters. Karen raised her eyes from her notes and looked directly at Max. There was something unsettling in the way she watched him, as if she were evaluating his reactions with every word that came out of his mouth. The tension in the air was palpable, and Levi felt his stomach tighten with the sense that they were being judged, even though they didn't know why. Karen, Max, you're nervous. Maybe the pressure of the situation is getting to you, but what we need to know is if anything is happening that could harm Liam. This investigation is to ensure his well-being. Max pressed his lips together, trying to hold back the urge to yell. But Levi touched his arm, signaling for calm. It was as if everything they did or said would be used against them. Even when they were being honest, there was a feeling that nothing was being believed. The police weren't far behind. The officer, a middle-aged man named Steve, stood near the door, watching everything in silence. Every look he exchanged with Karen made Levi feel like a noose was tightening around his neck. Steve, calm but firm, we need to check the situation in Liam's room, just to make sure his environment is appropriate. We'll also need a sample of anything related to his care, like bed linens, toys, everything. We want to make sure everything is in order. Levi took a deep breath, trying to process everything. He no longer knew what was real. Everything seemed to be happening too fast. The invasion of privacy, the way they were being watched, it all felt like a nightmare they couldn't wake up from. They had done everything right. Why were they being treated like criminals? Max stood up without saying a word. He walked to Liam's room and started opening the drawers of the bed, looking for the boy's things. Levi, still stunned, looked at the officer, trying to find some sign that this was all just a mistake. Levi, I don't understand. Nothing is happening. Liam is fine. Steve looked at Levi without changing his expression. Steve, we're going to check, sir. The investigation is for his well-being, and that's the only way we can ensure he's safe. Levi remained silent, staring at the closed door of Liam's room. Margaret's words echoed in his mind, and the uncertainties only grew. How could he prove nothing was wrong? How could they push away the accusations that were beginning to gain momentum in the neighborhood? He didn't know what would become of his life from then on, but he knew a storm was brewing. His family's future was at stake, and no matter how hard they tried to be strong, the sense of helplessness spread like wildfire. Liam didn't deserve this, and they, as parents, didn't deserve to live with this doubt. When Steve came out of the room with a set of Liam's clothes and toys, Levi and Max exchanged glances once more, but now with a much heavier weight on their shoulders. The visit from the police and the social worker was just the beginning. Margaret had opened Pandora's box, and now all they could do was wait and try to face the worst. Whatever came next, it would be a fight for the truth. The following days after the police visit were the longest of Levi and Max's lives. Margaret's accusations spread like wildfire. Every eye in the neighborhood turned against them. Every step they took seemed to be followed. Every word they exchanged was observed. Liam, still unaware of everything that was happening, continued his routine. But for Levi and Max, nothing was normal anymore. Their routine, so carefully built over the months, was being shattered by a nightmare. Max, angrily, in a low voice, they're all watching us, Levi. I feel it. Levi felt the same. Every time they went out for a walk with Liam in the park or even to buy something at the local grocery store, they noticed the furtive glances, the whispered conversations. It was as if the whole town was waiting for them to fall in some way. But deep down, they both knew it was more than just a glance. It was a condemnation. It was a rejection. At home, things weren't any better. The phone rang every hour, most calls from unknown numbers, but also from acquaintances who were uncomfortable speaking directly to them. Some people offered support, but they were not the same, and it was no longer the same world they lived in. And then, the worst happened. On a cloudy Saturday morning, Levi and Max's door was suddenly knocked on. When they opened it, They found a crowd of reporters and cameras in front of their house. It was as if they had been expected, as if they were ready for a show. Reporter 1. Levi Max, how do you respond to the child abuse accusation made by your neighbor Margaret? Can you give us a statement? Reporter 2. The accusation has already been confirmed by the Department of Social Services. How is Liam? Is he okay? Is he safe with you? The pressure was overwhelming. Levi, trying to stay calm, looked at Max, who was clenching his fists. Words wouldn't come out of his mouth, and the image of the scene only worsened with every passing second. They tried to close the door quickly, but the crowd was already inside the entrance. Max, voice trembling, you need to leave. Now. It was useless. They were in front of their house, and all that remained now was the heavy silence of knowing the cameras were capturing every gesture. The media had invaded their lives relentlessly. Liam was at the back of the house, unaware of everything happening. But the parents were being crushed by public doubt, and no matter how much they tried to protect the boy, he was, in some way, also a victim of this situation. Inside the house, the tension grew. Max spent the entire day trying to do what he could to keep calm, but the truth was that nothing seemed safe anymore. They were being watched by everyone around them. From time to time, a newspaper with sensationalist headlines was left at the door, or an anonymous message was left in their mailbox. Max, I can't take it anymore, Levi. I can't. What happened to our life? Levi, we have to endure, Max. We need to do this for Liam. For him, but the weight of the accusation didn't disappear. It was a continuous unease, a feeling that they were being pushed away not only from the community but from their own identities. What hurt the most wasn't the judgment of others, but the sense that, somewhere, someone believed they could be guilty. Something about this felt wrong, but how could they prove they were right when everything seemed to be against them? It was when Liam unknowingly helped. One peaceful night, while Levi and Max were in the kitchen preparing dinner, they heard a small voice coming from the hallway. When they reached the living room, they found Liam staring intently at the TV. The sound was off, but the screen showed images of the couple being interviewed by reporters. The child was silent, eyes fixed on the screen. Liam, in a low, hesitant voice, why are they talking about you, Daddy? Levi and Max exchanged a glance. The silence that followed was deep, painful. Little Liam didn't understand what was happening, but the innocence of his question was enough to hurt anyone who heard it. They had created a safe world for him, and now it was being destroyed by something beyond their control. At that moment, something inside Levi and Max broke. They could no longer leave things like this. They could no longer wait for the world around them to understand the truth on its own. They needed to act. Levi, determined, Max, we're going to fight. We're going to prove that none of this is true. We're going to face everything for Liam. Max, who had been despondent before, now felt a spark of hope. But that hope wouldn't be easy to win. They knew it wouldn't be quick, and it wouldn't be easy. The battle that would follow wouldn't just be against the accusations, but against the stigmas, against the prejudices deeply rooted in society itself. And for that, they needed to be prepared. For Liam, for themselves. But while the couple made plans and tried to regain their peace, the neighborhood continued to divide. Conversations on the sidewalks became more frequent. Some supported them, but others whispered about what seemed to be a great lie to be uncovered. The time that passed, however, didn't bring answers, only more questions. And the pressure only grew. The pressure on Levi and Max did not diminish. Every time Liam spent more time out of the house, at school or extracurricular activities, the couple felt an increasing sense of losing control. They had been through so much to finally create a family. And now, the life they had been so careful to build was being destroyed in an instant. What hurt the most was the silence that lingered between them. Max, in particular, was struggling with a sense of powerlessness. He had always been the protector, the strong one, but now he felt vulnerable, almost helpless in the face of the wave of rumors spreading through New York. Max, sitting at the table, head down. I don't know what to do anymore, Levi. What is going through their heads? How can people believe this? Levi, trying to stay calm. I know, Max, but we have to hold on. We have Liam, and we have each other. Max looked at Levi, trying to find a point of support. But deep down, he knew the situation was out of their hands. The neighborhood they lived in, a middle-class community in Brooklyn, was not used to the idea of a family like theirs. Although there was growing diversity in many parts of the city, this neighborhood had its own norms and values, with some more conservative residents who didn't look kindly on Levi and Max's relationship, and even less on the adoption of a child by a gay couple. One afternoon, after a long day, Levi and Max were home, not knowing what to do to put out the fire spreading around them. Then, the door opened. It was Liam, coming home from school. His face was tense, his eyes were teary. Levi rushed to him, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. Levi, concerned, what happened, son? Are you okay? Liam, swallowing his tears, voice trembling. The others, they said things at school. They said that you're not good, that you hurt me. Levi felt his heart tighten in his chest. The boy was suffering, and they couldn't protect him from that pain. They couldn't block the judging looks, nor the cruel words of those who didn't understand the love they had for Liam. Max, hearing this, felt anger rise, but also a sense of urgency. They couldn't keep going like this. They couldn't let others shape Liam's future. Max, trying to hold it together, listen, son, that's not true. Never. We love you, and that's what matters. But Liam was just as scared as they were. It was as if everything he knew was being turned upside down. He who had never questioned the love of his parents was now immersed in a whirlwind of uncertainties. School, the neighborhood, the whole city seemed to be saying that their love wasn't enough. The news of the accusations continued to loom over them, and as the scandal grew, the couple found themselves isolated. Some neighbors tried to approach to show support, but many others preferred to stay away, as if they were afraid of being contaminated by something they didn't even understand. They were the target, and everyone around them seemed to shy away, afraid of being swept away by the tide of the scandal. The media also didn't give them a break. The reports about the case continued to be published in local newspapers, then replicated on the internet. Sensationalist blogs wasted no opportunity to make speculations, and images of the couple being confronted by police officers soon became a symbol of shame in the city. And then, at the height of the chaos, one night, Max received an unexpected call. It was their defense lawyer, Michael, an old friend of Levi's, someone they trusted to help them get out of this situation. Michael, in a grave voice, Levi, Max, I know you're going through a tough time. I'm going to help you. But we need to act fast. Margaret is spreading lies, and the evidence is against you. But there is something we need to investigate. Something that could change everything. Levi and Max exchanged a look filled with expectation and apprehension. What did Michael mean? Something that could change the course of things? What could be stronger than the testimonies of neighbors and the newspaper articles? Levi, anxious, what did you find, Michael? Michael, the accusation doesn't come from a clean source. I found something about Margaret, something that, if true, will make all these accusations fall apart, but we'll need time to prove it. It might take days, maybe more. Levi and Max didn't know if what they were hearing was real or if it was just one last hope, but they were willing to move forward. They needed something, anything, to make them believe they could prove their innocence. As the night wore on, Levi and Max sat in silence, thinking about the future, the truth that had yet to be revealed. Time was against them, but there was a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they still had a chance to turn the tide. But one thing was certain: no one would leave this battle unscathed. If necessary, they would fight until the end to protect what they loved most. The following days were a mixture of uncertainty and tension. Max and Levi, though trying to stay calm, felt as if they were walking on a tightrope, expecting reality to make them fall at any moment. With every step, the pressure grew stronger, and the constant feeling that they were being watched and judged never left them. The police continued to investigate them, though with a more cautious approach now that the case was gaining more media attention. Margaret's accusation had spread like wildfire, and the population of New York was divided. Some people showed support, but most stayed on the sidelines, not wanting to be associated with such a controversial case. Then, after Michael's phone call, Levi and Max met with their lawyer in his office, determined to find out what he had uncovered about Margaret. The atmosphere was heavy with anxiety. Michael entered with a folder in hand, his eyes serious but with a faint hint of hope. "Michael, I found something. I uncovered a connection between Margaret and a rather problematic past. She has a history of making false accusations against other families, mostly involving claims of abuse. And interestingly, there are records of her being involved in several debates over adoption rights. It seems that somehow she feels threatened by the idea of a gay couple raising a child." Max leaned back in his chair, incredulous. What Michael was saying seemed so insane, but at the same time, it made sense. Margaret had always been a problematic figure in the neighborhood, but no one would have imagined she could do something so destructive. "Max, growing angrier, you're saying she made all of this up? That it's just a personal attack?" "Michael, I can't say for sure yet, but everything points to that. What we need now are proofs. If we can link these accusations to something she's done in the past, that could be the key to tearing everything down." Levi felt the weight of the situation pressing down on his shoulders. If Margaret really was lying, the impact would be devastating. Their lives had been destroyed, their careers questioned, and Liam was at the center of it all. The little boy, already so vulnerable, needed protection, and all Levi and Max wanted was to ensure that he could have a peaceful childhood, free from the ghosts of fear and shame. That day passed with no concrete updates, but deep down, a sense of urgency grew. They needed a clear strategy. Every move now would be crucial. The next morning, the long-awaited twist arrived, and it was more surprising than they could have imagined. During the investigation, Michael discovered a crucial detail: a recorded conversation with Margaret in which she talked about her views on traditional families and how she opposed adoption by same-sex couples. The recording had been made by a former co-worker who, aware of Margaret's history, had kept it as a sort of insurance, in case something like what was happening occurred. Although this recording wasn't direct proof that Margaret was lying about the abuse, it significantly weakened her claims. It showed there was an ideological bias behind her actions. She wasn't just exposing potential violence, she was attacking Levi and Max's family structure. Levi, eyes wide upon hearing the recording, this is all we need. "Michael, you did an amazing job." Max, with a tense smile, "Now we need to make sure this reaches the right people. We can't let all of this be in vain." But even with this new evidence, the couple knew the road ahead would still be tough. Margaret wouldn't be easily defeated. She had allies, and her influence in the community was greater than they had imagined. But at least now, they had enough weapons to fight. And more importantly, Liam could finally see that there was light at the end of the tunnel. The legal battle that would follow would be fierce. But the impact of this discovery was immediate. Public opinion began to shift. Support for the couple grew, and those who had been hesitant to get involved started to take sides. But the truth, though beginning to emerge, still wasn't enough to resolve the case immediately. The damage had already been done. The stigma of the false accusation was ingrained in many people's minds, and the fight for vindication was only just beginning. The following nights were filled with unbearable tension. The couple didn't know what the next step would be, but they were more united than ever. For them, the only thing that mattered was Liam. He was the reason they were fighting, and although the future was still uncertain, at least now they could see a path forward. The courtroom was full. The tension was palpable. Levi and Max, with their lawyer Michael, watched closely as Margaret sat on the witness stand, her expression hardened, but with a faint unease in her eyes. They were there, for the last time, in front of the system that had decided their future. The room was silent, except for whispers and the rustling of chairs. Everyone was waiting for the decision, a decision that could change everything, not just for Levi and Max, but for Liam, for the community, and for how people viewed what makes a true family. Margaret had made her case. Her accusation of child abuse against Levi and Max was detailed, supported by the words she had spread throughout the neighborhood. However, her attempt to destroy the couple's life was now being carefully dismantled. The recording Michael had found evidence of Margaret's bias was being used against her. This, combined with proof of her history of false accusations, had undermined any credibility she might have had. Max and Levi's defense was strong, but they knew the path to this point hadn't been easy. The months of uncertainty, the talks with Liam about the rumors, the shame they felt when they were on the street and people stared at them with curious and suspicious eyes. All of that weighed on them, but it also made them stronger. They knew what they were fighting for: their family, the truth, and Liam's right to live a life full of love and safety. The judge, after over an hour of deliberation, made a gesture that made all their hearts race. He looked at the lawyers and then at Margaret's side and began speaking calmly. "Judge, this court is responsible for reviewing all the evidence presented. The allegations made by the prosecution have not been sufficiently supported by concrete evidence. On the contrary, the evidence presented by the defense indicates that the allegations are unfounded, based on personal prejudices and not on facts. Therefore, the case is closed, with Levi and Max being acquitted, and all charges are dismissed." The relief was immediate, but the emotion overwhelmed Levi and Max. What had seemed impossible was now a reality. They were free. The truth had prevailed, but the price they paid was high. Margaret was escorted out of the room, her head bowed, while the eyes of the onlookers turned to her in disapproval. She had lost the battle, but more importantly, the community had woken up to what really mattered: the love and commitment of a family. Margaret's false accusation wasn't just a blow to Levi and Max. It was a blow to everyone fighting for a more just and inclusive society. Max took Levi's hand, squeezing it tightly. They looked at each other, and for the first time in months, they smiled genuinely. The pain of the struggle was still there, but the feeling of victory was even greater. It was a victory not just for them, but for all couples fighting for their freedom and for the children who deserve to grow up in an environment of love, no matter how their families are structured. As they left the courtroom, Levi looked at Max and then at Liam, who was there with them, now with a joyful smile. He could see that, although the scars were still there was a sense of peace. The fear of losing custody of Liam had been a constant shadow, but now it was as if the sun had finally come out. "Levi, let's go home." "My love, let's go to our home." "Liam, do you want to take a trip with us? Just the three of us?" Liam, with his infectious laugh, nodded. "Yes, Daddy, let's go anywhere. I just want to be with you." And so, after all the pain and suffering, Levi, Max, and Liam found their way back to peace. They would no longer be defined by others' judgment. Their love, their family, and their bond were stronger than any accusation or prejudice. They were united, and that was all that mattered.